that your tests and your homework. Do you have your folder, Eli?
Yes, I do. I got my mom to sign it 10 minutes ago.
Okay. Oh, well, did y'all enjoy your week off?
It was good.
Yes. It was good? Okay. All right. Okay, I have a couple things to tell you that have nothing to do with botany or plants that I learned about this past week that I thought were really interesting that applied to the last chapter. It's about salmon and the Andromenous fish. So when we were in Wyoming, one of my husband's good friends who had been a salmon fisherman in Alaska for 10 years before he went back to school, he was with us. And so he was talking about living in Alaska and the fishing. And so I started asking him questions about the salmon and the Andromenous fish. And I thought this was really interesting, and this wasn't what I had imagined. But he said that basically so you remember how the salmon are born in the fresh water, in the river, and then they swim out to the ocean, but then when they're ready to lay their eggs, or the male salmon are ready to fertilize eggs, they come back to where they were born, okay? And so I thought that maybe like this was like a yearly thing. It's not. With different types of salmon, it's like a certain number of years. And so he fished king salmon, and he said it's 6 years for king salmon, and that this is going to be the only time that they're going to lay eggs or fertilize eggs. And that these king salmon swim back, he said it's close to 4,000 miles upstream. I had no idea. And that basically they have to catch them before they lay their eggs, because once they lay their eggs, he was like, their bodies are so exhausted and their stores are so depleted because they're not stopping to eat. They're using up their energy stores, which is why those are salmon are like an oily, fatty fish, because that's how they're storing their energy. That he said you like pick them up and they like disintegrate after they lay their eggs. So he's like, that's the end of their life cycle. So I said, well, if you are catching them before they lay their eggs, then how are they ever laying eggs? Like, are we not losing our salmon population? How are they actually laying their eggs if you're catching them before? And he said they limit the number of salmon that can be fished, so that there's still the supply of salmon is still being replenished. And then other types of salmon, he's like, there's one type of salmon that is every 4 years that they come after 4 years, but his type came after 6 years. But I just thought that he's like, you could like pick it up and it's like the fish just like falls apart and disintegrates. It's just
Little fish.
I know, I had no idea they went through so much. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Okay, so we are going to turn.
I'm so far in.
I know.
So we are on module 14. We only got 3 modules left. 3 modules left, okay? And I like that the book does the 2 plant modules right now in the spring while stuff is growing. And I might notice things more. So we are on page 429. Eli and Anna, did you do the leaf lab?
Yes. However, none of the leaves have grown back in my place.
Yeah, me too.
So
I
I
was
can
a little
only,
bit worried.
It
about
was
I
that.
so
only
hard
get
to
like
find,
six,
yeah.
6 leaves, and like 4 of those
Uh-huh.
did not have actual bark to them. They were like plants or vines, so I couldn't look at
Uh-huh.
them.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
nothing.
There was like,
I was a little bit worried about that. This, for some reason, I feel like maybe co-op was a little bit later, started a little bit later when I taught it a couple years ago, and so the leaf situation was a little bit better, but I was worried about that. Okay, what about you, Anna?
I haven't done it yet because I just got back.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay,
I
well,
have the leaves.
Okay.
I just
well, let's,
Haven't
it's
done it
it's
yet.
totally fine. I'm
Right.
totally good with it. But let's just say this. just give it maybe another 2 weeks and go out and try to get the leaves. I want you to get 7 good specimens. And when you put your leaves in your lab notebook, I think and y'all can ask Miranda what she did, because I remember I liked what she did. But I think she took 2 pieces of wax paper and she put the leaf in between the wax paper and like taped it. This doesn't apply to you. Taped it in so you could see it, but it was protected. And so she would have a leaf taped in the wax paper, or you could put it in like a Ziploc bag and tape it flat into your lab notebook. But just do a leaf per page, okay? And then underneath, then you're gonna put the things that you need to put about the leaf, the identification. Does that make sense? And so 7 good leaves, get the information, and the date that you have to turn your lab notebook in this year is already on the calendar. I don't know what date it is, but it's probably like the week before the last week of, I think it is the week before the last week of class. And so hopefully besides that leaf lab, everything in your lab notebook is caught up. That's why I've given you those lab days. And so I would say, in the next 2 weeks or right after spring break, get that leaf lab done. And put something Put something over, okay, but that's not in your lab notes.
No, I'm gonna, cause I haven't gotten all the way up, caught up to the leaf lab yet, so I put them here and then I can cut them out and put them in the lab notebook easier.
Okay. All right, just make sure you have something protecting them, maybe like something over, like a piece of clear wrap or something like that, so they're protected in there. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody have questions about that? Okay. All right, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. And I gave you all the summary. Okay, and Nancy, I'm gonna go ahead and break the news to you now. We are not gonna do a Quizlet on this module, and this is why, okay? I started one while I was on the trip, and didn't finish it, and I was gonna start working on it again this weekend. But I went through the test, and the entire test is from this, and I did it purposely, is from the module summary and the study guide. Okay, that's exactly how this test is set up. I wrote it from the module summary and the study guide. And so I feel like if I do the Quizlet, it's just gonna be a lot more information. I mean, it's not just about it taking time for me, because I'm fine with that. I think that last time when I did it this way, some people liked it. It was kind of a break from Quizlet, and most teachers that you're gonna have throughout your life are not going to do Quizlets for you. They're gonna give you, you're gonna have to study your notes and study your work. And so I feel like this is the only module I'm doing it for this way, that it's probably good practice for everybody. I just kind of came to that conclusion yesterday. And I actually went through the test and wrote by every question where it was in the module summary or the study guide, so I can make absolutely sure that everything was included. And so basically, when you study for the test, you're gonna make sure that you know the study guide and understand everything in the study guide and understand everything in the module summary. How do you feel about that?
I'm good with that.
You're good with that?
I kind of need a break from Quizlet.
You need a break from Quizlet, okay. Essie, I know that Quizlet probably helps you. How do you feel like as long as you know what to study?
I feel like the summaries have been helping,
Yeah.
The summaries have been helping? Okay, the summaries are really good, I think. Okay, Nancy, you gonna be okay over there?
Would you be giving us what the discussion questions would be?
I mean, I'll give you some kind of clue
Okay.
about the discussion questions, yes. I'll give you some kind of clue. I'm not even sure that
I don't think Nancy likes the discussion.
So yes, I will definitely, and then I will give you a list like I normally do, to help prepare you. Okay, so what is botany?
Study of plants.
Study of plants. Who is interested in this?
No.
Who finds this interesting and
I did this a few years ago.
It's-
We had to stop halfway because it was not making sense from there on.
oh, it wasn't? Okay, well, hopefully we can clarify some things for you.
Yeah.
You're interested.
Yeah, I just grew up with like, my mom loves plants, and she
Uh-huh.
always taught us about plants. And then also my uncle's a landscape architect and is a botanist. This is what they call it.
Yeah.
And so he's super into it. He's actually doing a,
You told me that about the baseball
baseball
stadium.
stadium. So he's gonna put a lot of plants in it,
Uh-huh.
and he really likes plants. So I guess growing up with him too, has been like, he always
That's
like
cool.
points out the Latin names, like, that's what it does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. How do you feel about it, Eli?
We shall see.
Anybody have a garden, do a garden at their house, like a vegetable garden?
Yeah, not the last year, because last year my parents were doing a lot of renovations, but the year before we did that and nothing grew basically except for like cucumbers. Like the amount of cucumbers we had, and my mom made pickles, but we couldn't eat them all because she made like literally like 30 jars of pickles and like filled all the way up. So like half of them went to waste because they got too fermented, and so like they were all like weird.
Well, you should go over to the Connolly's house sometime
Yeah,
and take a tour. Get Mike to tell you about their garden, because they definitely have an amazing garden. So nobody else grows food?
We've done it before
Mm-hmm.
with limited success.
Mm-hmm.
We kill everything at her.
You do.
We try, but you know, it's
I am going to start trying. I've decided that's one of my things now that I have a little more time on my hands, that my kids are older, that I want to start learning how to do.
It's not as fun as it sounds.
It definitely
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're in Kingdom Plantae. We're talking about botany, the study of plants. Are plants the biggest producers of oxygen?
No.
No.
Phytoplankton.
Phytoplankton, which is in Kingdom Protista, okay, those are the biggest producers of oxygen, but plants also are important producers of oxygen. Okay, so then the book talks about different types of plants. It mentions perennial plants, annual plants, and biennial plants. Anybody want to take one of those and tell me about it, Nancy?
Perennial, I guess is what it's called.
A
It's-
perennial?
Yeah, it's like, it comes back year after year.
Okay, do you have an example of one?
I think, I can't tell, is it the, I can never remember the name. I have it in my head.
Is it not just a tree?
Well, it'll like die during, not like die, but like
Right.
it'll go away at a certain season and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
We have them in our yard, and I can't, I guess,
Hostas?
hydrangeas.
Hot hydrangeas, hostas,
Hostas,
yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
But there's another one.
So usually, hostas don't have this, but usually perennial plants are, the stem is gonna have a little woodiness to it, like the hydrangeas. Y'all know what hydrangeas are? They make the big blue, well, the color of the hydrangea flower, somewhat depends on how acidic the soil is. It's gonna be more blue if your soil is more acidic, and it's gonna be more pinky purple if the soil is more basic. But then there's also different varieties of hydrangeas that have white flowers. Those are more sun hydrangeas. So, okay, so hydrangeas would definitely be perennial plants. What about, who wants to take annual? Eli?
Because we've got one before. I don't remember what they were called, but they die after a year.
Yes. Okay, anybody have an example of an annual?
Is a posy one, like a?
I'm thinking pansies.
Pansy, yeah,
Pansies, is that what you're
pansy,
thinking?
yeah.
Okay.
I
So
think
pansies are the pretty little flowers that grow in the fall and the winter that are blooming right now. When it gets too hot, the pansies will die, but a lot of people have like purple and yellow and kind of a mix, or they plant it around their mailbox. So pansies are an annual. Another annual that's popular around here in the summertime when it gets warmer are lantana, which they actually kind of have a woodier stem, which most annuals have just a green stem, not a woody stem, but lantana make the yellow flowers. Sometimes people have them kind of like cascading out of their pots. Anybody know what I'm talking about, Lindsay?
Yeah.
The bright yellow? Okay, and what about a biennial plant? What is biennial?
2 years.
Okay, lives for 2 years. So the first year of the biennial plant, it's gonna be storing up food, and then the second year is when it's going to reproduce, and then it's going to die. Okay, so this is important. This is not just important for plants, but this is important in biology, that I wanna make sure everybody understands. So we know that cells are the building blocks of life, okay? And cells are made up of biomolecules. So biomolecules are gonna be proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids, okay? A group of biomolecules is gonna make up a cell. A group of cells is gonna make up what? And we're talking about a group of cells, what would we call that?
Molecule?
A group of cells.
Oh,
Somehow.
and I think something like
Dark cells? No.
I don't know that it actually explains this in the book. I wanted to make sure everybody understood these terms and what they meant. Tissue. Okay, so when you hear tissue, and I think it's confusing because the book's talking about tissue, and I'm like thinking, do they even know what that means? So tissue is a group of cells, okay? All right, so a bunch of tissue together makes up what?
Muscle?
So muscle is tissue. That's a type of tissue. Muscle tissue, fat tissue, skin tissue, okay? So a group of tissue makes up an organ, okay? So, like your kidneys or your liver or your heart, okay? That's good. A group of tissues makes up your organs, okay? And then a group of organs makes up an organ system, okay? So your digestive system is a group of organs working together. Right. So, but I mostly really just wanted you to understand what the word tissue is, since the book's talking about tissue, that you have a grasp of that. Okay. So, plant organs, just like we have organs, they have organs, are divided into two types. What are the two types of plant organs?
Vegetative organs and reproductive plant organs.
Okay, and so what is an example of a vegetative organ, or a vegetative part, Nancy?
It would be like lettuce or like the leaf.
The leaf.
So not like a
Or
leaf
part.
stem or like not with seeds. It would just be like the leaf.
Yes, so it would consist of stems, roots, and leaves, so it would be like lettuce. So a lot of what we think are vegetables are vegetative organs, okay? And then the reproductive organs, Ruby,
Or like the flowers and then the fruit.
and then,
seeds.
yes, so anything that's gonna encase the seeds is going to be a reproductive organ. And so really, reproductive organs are considered fruit. Now, with our kind of dietary, what you learn dietarily, a lot of things that are technically fruits, like peppers, nutritionally we kind of treat them as vegetables, but scientifically they are fruit because they are a reproductive plant organ that's encasing the seed. But calorie-wise and nutritionally wise, they actually kind of fit more with vegetables. So, so the way that something is classified as far as food and nutrition goes is a little bit different than it's classified as far as biology goes. So peppers, corn, peas, tomatoes, eggplants, and squash are actually all fruit. Okay, so now we're getting into types of tissue, which is going to be groups of cells. And the first type of tissue that we're going to talk about is meristematic tissue. Does anybody remember what is unique about meristematic tissue, Nancy?
There's cells that have like not well, they're called undifferential cells.
Undifferentiated.
Yeah. That have like they don't have any particular function. So they're like if there's something that the plant needs, then the cell's gonna form to like do that function.
Is there any type of cell that we've studied so far this year that reminds you of, Ruby?
Stem cells?
Stem cells, okay? It's kind of like that. So it's undifferentiated means it hasn't decided what kind of cell it's gonna be yet, okay? And so meristematic cells to me remind me of stem cells and that they can become whatever type of cell the plant needs it to become. So they're a good thing. Another type of tissue is ground tissue, and that's gonna be the most common type of tissue. It's gonna offer support to the plant. It's gonna be involved in a variety of plant functions like metabolism and photosynthesis and storage of starch and oil. So most of the plant is going to be made up of ground tissue. And what type of tissue is on the outer layer of the plant?
Dermal tissue.
Dermal tissue. Okay, so dermatology, that's the doctor for your skin, okay? So dermal tissue, the plant has the outer layer, the epidermis. So the plant has an epidermis, we have an epidermis. It's our outer layer of skin. So that's gonna be, the dermal tissue is gonna be a single layer of cells, and it protects the plant from, it's kind of like the shield between the plant and the environment. It prevents needed substances from leaving the plant, and it protects the plant from bacteria and fungi, and it's also responsible for absorbing water and minerals into the plant, okay? All right, what other type of tissue what's our fourth type of tissue that we haven't talked about?
Vascular tissue.
Vascular tissue. Okay, so when we talk about we're talking about people, and we talk about our vascular system. For a physician, 2 years ago when I taught this class, one of the girls that was in the class, her dad was a vascular surgeon. Does anybody know what he worked on? He was a vascular surgeon.
Heart, right?
So
Some.
cardio is heart.
Oh.
But he was strictly vascular, so that's gonna be like the veins and arteries, the circulatory system. So most are gonna be cardiovascular, okay, most people, but he truly just did procedures on on arteries and veins, okay? And so our vascular system is how our blood nutrients get circulated throughout our body, and the plant's vascular tissue does the same thing. So what needs to move throughout the vascular tissue of the plant?
Water and nutrients.
Water and nutrients. Okay, so we've got two types of vascular tissue in the plant. The plant tissue, the vascular tissue can be divided into two categories, and they are a little different, and they do different things. Who can tell me what?
I don't know how to pronounce this. Xylem.
Xylem. Mm-hmm. And what is xylem like?
It's non-living vascular tissue, and then the phloem is living.
Okay, so it is non-living and living, but does anybody know what travels through the xylem and what travels through the phloem? Mm-hmm.
The xylem carries water and dissolved minerals, and the phloem carries sugar and organic substance.
Okay, so the xylem so the water is going to come in through the roots mostly, okay? And so the xylem is going to carry the water with dissolved minerals in it up through the roots, up through the tree, and out to wherever it's needed, okay? That's going to be the xylem. The phloem carries the sugars that are made through photosynthesis back throughout the tree wherever it needs the stored food. Okay? All right, so now we're going to look at our leaves. So we're on page 431, and the next two pages. So what is the very tip of the leaf blade called?
Apex?
Apex, okay, let's raise our hands so I can try to call on some other people. Okay, Apex, thank you Ruby for participating so much, I appreciate it. Okay. And what is the main portion of the leaf called? The blade, okay. Okay, raise hands so I can call. And then what about the stalk that attaches the leaf to the tree? Nancy?
Petio.
Petiole. Is that how do you your
I don't know. I've never heard it.
Oh wait, petiole.
petiole?
Is how it was with the little like, or pet, yeah.
Okay, and probably right now, if you're looking where at some trees where the leaves are coming in, I want everybody to just kind of try to look for this week. This last thing that's listed, the stipules, okay, which are small leaf-like appendages that form at the base of the leaf, and they're usually covered by the leaf once the leaf starts to grow. I think probably right now in a lot of trees that where the leaves it's starting to bud out, you're gonna see some little stipules. So look for those on your trees. Okay, so when you have one leaf coming off of a petiole versus several, what is that called? Okay, sorry. Okay. Simple, and what's it called when you have several, Nancy? Compound. Okay. So yes, so on page 432, you have the simple leaf and the compound leaf. And then when you look down at figure 14.3 on page 432, it shows you some leaf mosaics. That's going to be with a compound leaf, how they are going to be arranged on the branch, okay? The arrangement on the stem. I'm sorry, and you know what? The leaf mosaic doesn't necessarily mean that it's a compound leaf. A compound leaf is that you have multiple leaves on one petiole. These are leaves arranged on the stem, kind of the pattern that they're arranged on the stem. So they can be a simple leaf. Okay, so you've got some different patterns. The alternate, which is going to be the most common, the opposite, and the world. Okay, and why does this matter? Why does this arrangement matter? How the leaf is arranged on the stem, Nancy?
Like it helps you classify the plant.
Well, it does, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm thinking about, remember how we talked about form follows function? That's an important principle in biology. Eli?
Surface area for photosynthesis.
Exactly. It's how can the leaves capture the maximum amount of light. Okay, so God is the author of form follows function, so he's designing it so that they can maximize capturing light. Okay. Good job. Okay, so then we're going to get into shape, margin, and venation. Shape is going to be how the leaf is shaped. Margin is going to be what the edges of the leaf are like, and venation is going to be how the veins are shaped that are going throughout the leaf, okay? And so we've got you people who have looked for the leaves, raise your hand if you've got any of these shapes. Linear. You got one, Anna?
Yeah.
Okay, elliptical. Oval. Did anybody have a hard time deciding if it was elliptical or oval?
Yeah.
I think that could kind of go either way. Okay. Deltoid. You found a deltoid?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay. Chordate. And again, that's still a little tricky. You know, some of those.
I feel like the picture they gave wasn't as good.
Some of those also, because the leaves aren't fully formed right now, it might be hard to tell. Orbicular, lobed. So lobes, that's going to be like what your oak
I know
trees
there's
do.
some in my
Yes,
backyard.
so you're definitely going to
There's
see some
that.
lobed trees. Cleft, that's going to be like your maple trees, so probably that one's going to be one that you're going to find. Your needle-like, and then your scale-like, which the scale like is probably gonna be more of like a tropical type plant.
Would, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Would evergreens count as leaves? I can't remember, cause I know I have an evergreen in my backyard.
No, you could do a needle-like one.
Okay.
The ones that I have are look more like scales than needles. The ones that my tree in my yard has.
Oh, let me see.
You see that one?
I'm not sure about that. That looks, I think I'm almost picturing the scale is almost like the tip of what asparagus looks like. You know what I'm talking about? That it's more like that, but that would be something to kind of Google and look at. Okay. All right. So then what about the different types of edges, the margin? What are our options for that? Entire, and what is that, Nancy?
It's like the whole thing is smooth.
The whole thing is gonna be smooth, okay? Ruby,
Serrate.
and what is that?
Those are like tiny little, like it's kind of like bumpy, scratchy.
Yes, okay, so sharp teeth, and then what is the difference between serrate and dentate?
The dentate's gonna have more sharp, like bigger.
The big difference is that the serrate bumps are gonna point straight out and the dentate bumps are gonna point up towards the apex.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how you're gonna tell the difference. Okay. All right, what about crenate? Crenate, sorry, not crenate, crenate. What does that remind you of?
Like a tree.
A
It looks
bush.
like a
It looks
bush.
like a bush.
Yeah, a bush, or like a little kid drawing of a tree.
Looks like a lily pad.
You know what it reminds me of? I feel like scalloped fashion is very kind of in style right now. You know what I'm talking about? Like little skirts that have
I
little
wouldn't know.
scallop bottoms, or like little tops that are. That's what it reminds me of right now. Or are they these little rugs that have little scalloped edges? Because all design is copied off of God's design, so that's what I thought. Oh, it's scalloped. It's so cute. Okay, similar. The undulate is
Wavy.
a little wavy, a little loosier, not quite as like perfectly scalloped as the crenate. Okay. All right, and so then the venation. What are the different venation patterns? Ruby? Parallel, and what is that like?
Like tiny little lines going parallel.
Okay, and what are they parallel to? Who remembers what runs down the middle of the leaf? What's it called?
Midrib?
The midrib. Okay, so the midrib is kind of the main vein that runs down the middle of the leaf, and with the parallel venation, it's going to be the other veins are going to be parallel to the midrib. Okay, what else? What else do we got? Pinnate.
Sorry.
Okay, and what is that?
It's like one midrib and then like branches coming off of it, like.
Everything's gonna branch off of the midrib, and then how is that different, Nancy, from the palmate?
The sorry. I didn't study it. so-
It's okay.
Cause the palmate has like more like, I don't know how to describe it.
They have like, it branches off of each other.
Yes, so where the pinnate is only gonna branch off the midrib, the palmate, they're gonna branch off the midrib, but then they're gonna branch off of that. So it's almost like netted, if that makes sense. It's like they're gonna continue to branch off. Okay. All right, so one thing, and we're gonna talk more about the difference between monocot plants and dicot plants next week, but monocot plants are gonna pretty much always have parallel venation, where dicot plants are gonna have more of a netted venation. Okay, so they're gonna be more like the pinnate or the palmate. Okay? All right, okay, let's go ahead. Okay, let's look at page 435. On your own, which I'll get for A.
Deltoid, serrate, and pinnate.
Good.
Wait,
Okay.
would it be
Wait,
serrate
dentate?
or would it be dentate?
Did I say? I thought I said.
Because all the things were pointed out.
I wrote serrate, but I think it is dentate.
I did too, but I checked it. I was like, that's not right.
Wait,
Wait.
did you check it? And you got,
I checked it and I got cereal.
Oh.
I, personally, I
It
agree.
looks dentate.
I think it's more. Oh wait, hold on. I told y'all wrong. With serrate margins, the teeth usually point upwards towards the apex. I told you the wrong thing.
Oh, okay, I see.
If the teeth point outward, rather outward than just towards the apex, then it has a dentate margin.
Okay,
I
so
told you, I'm
the
sorry.
picture they chose for dentate is just a bad example.
Yeah, yes. So the dentate is going, well, the serrate picture is kind of unclear. I think that's the problem, if they had showed something more clear. So this is a better picture of serrate right here on your own. Okay, B.
The lobed,
Uh-huh.
And it's
Prenate?
entire.
oh, entire, I forgot to do entire, and then palmate.
Okay, good. Okay, C.
Cleft, dentate, and palmate.
Good. Okay, D.
D is linear, entire, parallel.
Okay, so that one I think can be undulate or entire.
Oh, I didn't see
Mhm.
those.
Either
Okay,
one.
yeah, it's-
When you're looking at that leaf, you see how the leaf is like wavy?
it just looks sad.
Mhm. Yes, okay, okay, good. All right, so now we're going to go to 436, and we're going to talk about the microscopic structure and the different types of tissue and what they're going to look like. So that top layer, if you look at that diagram under the microscope, you've got the outer layer of cells, that's going to be your epidermis, and that you're going to have that on the top and the bottom, okay? And why is the top of the leaf going to appear greener than the bottom of the
Because
leaf?
it's closer to the sun.
Well, it is closer to the sun, but what's making it appear greener,
The
Nancy?
biosynthesis.
Is it?
Okay, let's let Essie answer. Hold on, Essie. You had it. I could tell you were getting ready to say it.
Is that something different?
The what?
Bile, something different. Hold on.
What makes the leaf green, Eli?
It's chlorophyll. Chlorophyll.
Yes.
I'm like, is it?
Okay.
Why did I get bile?
yeah, Okay, so, well, because bile is green, Essie, so you were on the right, you were on
You were
the right
doing good.
wavelength. You obviously learned something this year. Okay, okay, so, the reason is because there's a lot more chloroplast towards the top of the leaf, okay? And so under that epidermis, you've got two layers. You've got the palisade mesophyll, which are very tightly packed cells. You see how tightly packed that is right up under the epidermis? Okay? And then under the palisade mesophyll, you have the spongy mesophyll. It is not as tightly packed. You see that the spacing kind of in between there, it's not as tightly packed. The palisade mesophyll is tightly packed and it's loaded with chloroplasts, okay? And you think, well, how do all those chloroplasts, how can they all capture the sunlight when those cells are so tightly packed in there, okay? And what is happening in that layer, that palisade mesophyll, is called cytoplasmic streaming. And so you all remember that kind of that jelly-like substance in the cell that everything's floating around in is called the cytoplasm. And the ions, for those who have taken chemistry in there, have electrical charge and they cause the cytoplasm to move around, okay? And so that cytoplasmic streaming is moving those chloroplasts around to where they need to be when they need to be there to capture the sunlight. So all kinds of like streaming and movement of the chloroplast to capture the light in that top palisade layer. And then in the spongy layer, there's less of that. There's more space, okay? And what is at the very bottom of the epidermis, this place where it says guard cells?
Or they open and close the stoma.
What's the stoma? Do you remember what the stoma is, Ruby?
They help exchange gas. in the
Yes, so
atmosphere.
it's kind of like, what it makes me think of from our last two modules, the spiracle, remember the spiracle on the animals that was like an opening where gas exchange could happen? The stoma is kind of like the plant's version of the spiracle, so it's like a hole where the plant can release oxygen and take in the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And why would it matter? Why would the guard cells need to be there to open and close? Why couldn't the plant holes just stay open all the time, Eli?
So it didn't overfill with carbon dioxide or didn't just take in oxygen.
That is a good guess, but that is not the right answer. Anybody remember from Module 10 the word transpiration? Do you remember that word, Essie? What, do you remember what transpiration is?
I don't, but
You
I
don't?
remember
Okay, you
the
remember the
word.
word. Okay. So transpiration is when water evaporates out of leaves, okay? And so what we don't want is so much transpiration to happen that the leaf doesn't have enough water.
Does that happen if like you give the leaf a lot of water but it still dries up? Or if you put water on the leaf and
Well, typically the water on the leaf doesn't matter, it's the water that comes in through the roots. Okay, so most water that's going into a plant is coming up through the roots. It's just leaving the plant through transpiration. Does that make sense, Nancy?
yeah, I just remembered gardener telling
So
me about the
most,
water
so some water might be absorbed through the leaves, but basically water is mostly gonna be absorbed through the roots. So that's why you can just put like a hose on the ground around your plants. You really just wanna get the water down to the roots. Yes?
I just remember I have this plant in my room, and basically it was dying, and in like the root, in like the soil. So I put it in like a vase of water, not like a vase, but like a thing of water, and then it like it's like the entire thing is full of roots now, and it like has only survived on water, and it like grows.
Without the soil.
Yeah, and it grows like new leaves and stuff. So
Oh, wow.
water. And I don't add anything to it. I just like change the water every couple weeks because it doesn't like get like gross or anything.
I'm surprised that it's able to get there's definitely things that you can grow in the water, and that's what, I don't know if you all have ever heard the term hydroponic gardening. So, and I actually have one of those, I used to do it, but it's just roots in the water. But when you do that, when I have this like machine and it like circulates the water up and down, and it's like made like a tower. But you have to put this mineral mixture in the water, so that, and you have to do it every week.
Really?
So that's really interesting that your plant is magnet, but you don't know what kind of plant it is.
I do. I just forgot the name. I have to check because I have like a bunch of them in my room.
what do they look like?
You are a plant girl. You should be all
My
about.
sister's plant girl.
I have like 7.
Lydia.
Lydia.
She has like, we have a whole, Scylla's old room is just dedicated to plants.
I have like 7 plants in my room.
Okay, so back to the guard cells. Okay, so the guard cells are going to open and close to prevent the transpiration. And who knows how the guard cells open and when they're going to be open and when they're going to be closed? Anybody remember this?
When they're gonna be open is when there's like enough like light and photosynthesis, and then when they close it, it's when they can't allow for them to like get in so much.
Okay,
It's
so
not explained.
in the daytime, when the chloroplast in the guard cells are doing photosynthesis and making sugars, okay, they're gonna make sugar. So when that sugar is in the cell, it's gonna cause, through osmosis and diffusion, water to come into that cell because the concentration is going to be higher on the inside. So water then is going to enter the cell. So that's going to cause the guard cell to swell up. When the guard cell swells up, that causes it to open at the stoma, okay? When it's not light outside and it's not producing photosynthesis, and so there's less sugar in the guard cell, okay, the water is going to, it's not going to be as swollen with water, and then it's going to close up. So at night, it's going to close up.
My mom got this tulip plant and it's in the sunroom, and so I walked out and was doing schoolwork, and then I walked back in because I stayed up late to do some extra schoolwork I needed to do. It was all closed up.
Oh.
And then it opens, and then I walked in this morning, it's all opened up
Opened up.
because of the sun.
Yes. Cool. Cool. Okay. All right. So we've got the guard cells. We've got the spongy mesophyll. Okay. And then that space in the spongy mesophyll allows the gases that come in through the guard cells, that carbon dioxide. There's more space in that spongy mesophyll, so it allows for more travel through that space to get up to the palisade mesophyll level where those gases are needed. Okay. All right. Now we're going to, okay, let's look at this. On page 438. A leaf cannot get the carbon dioxide it needs for photosynthesis. What most likely is wrong? On your own on 438. If it can't get the carbon dioxide it needs for photosynthesis, what is wrong? We just talked about this. Eli?
The guard cells are not open.
Yes, so the stoma is closed, the guard cells are not opening. Yes. Why can't the parenchyma be made of 2 layers of palisade mesophyll?
Because the spongy mesophyll is loaded with chloroplasts and helps with photosynthesis.
What were you gonna say, Ruby?
I was gonna say that there would be no way oxygen could get out or carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide could get in.
So remember how the palisade mesophyll is so tightly packed, okay? It's so tightly packed, and so the gases can travel through the spongy mesophyll to where they're needed, but they would be too tightly packed for the gases to get through. So if you had 2 layers, it wouldn't be able to get up to the top layer and then to the epidermis layer. So you can only have 1 layer of those tightly packed cells. Okay. All right, in the first section of this module, you learned about the 4 basic types of tissues in plants. Dermal. That's the skin, remember, the outside, the epidermis. The ground tissue, that's the majority of the plant. It's going to be storage, photosynthesis, structure support. The meristematic, that's like the stem cells. And the vascular, it's going to be the xylem and phloem. In this section, you learned about the epidermis, the parenchyma, and the collenchyma, okay, which I didn't even mention the collenchyma, I apologize. Classify each of these tissues within one of the 4 basic types of tissue. So the epidermis, what type of tissue is that?
Dermal.
Dermal, okay? The parenchyma, what type of tissue is that? What did you say, Ruby? Ground. Okay, so that's where the parenchyma the parenchyma is made up of going to be that palisade and the spongy mesophyll. Okay, that's going to be ground tissue. And then the collenchyma are cells that surround the xylem and phloem. Okay, so they are a type of, what type of tissue? Vascular. Okay, xylem, phloem, collenchyma.
This says in my book that it says the parenchyma and the collenchyma are ground tissue and not on your own like cancer part.
It says collenchyma is ground tissue?
Yeah.
Where are you seeing that? Hold on, okay,
Like
here we
at
go.
the end of
The tissues come into two types. The vascular tissue composed of xylem and phloem and another type of tissue called collenchyma. Collenchyma is made up of thick-walled cells that support the vein.
Well, I'm talking about like on the answers to on your own.
It said
it
that it
says
would be ground tissue.
The parenchyma and collenchyma are ground tissue.
I mean,
Okay.
I could see maybe that they said the collenchyma is like supporting the vascular. I'm not gonna ask that on the test. I can see how that could go either way with the collenchyma, but thank you. So that's what the answer was to that on your end. You checked it? Okay, well, I believe you. I'm not gonna, that will not be on the test, because I think it could go either way. Okay, so let's talk about leaf color. And why are leaves green?
That's because of chlorophyll.
The chlorophyll, okay. And are all plants green? No. Why? If a plant's not green, does it have chlorophyll?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does.
It's like a
It
little
does.
nutrient.
Okay, hold on, Essie, tell me why it would be, how it could have chlorophyll but not be green, do you remember?
Well, I know, I just remember the story when I was a kid.
Okay.
Like, the green is like, I used to remember because the green is like its little mask, and then like the red and the yellow and orange and fall is like its true colors. Is that right?
So, yes, yeah, that's probably a little story that's explaining this principle. So all of them are gonna have chlorophyll and chloroplast, but some plants are gonna have other pigments and plastids hold these pigments, okay, that show different colors. And so if they have more of the other type of pigment than they do of the chlorophyll, then they will read that color. So that makes sense. Your little story. So the carotenoids, okay, those are going to read orange and yellow colors like carrots and squash, sweet potatoes, okay, they're very rich, and carotenoids are very good for you, good for your eyes. So a lot of these we call them phytochemicals in plants, are very beneficial to our bodies. So, and then the other type of coloring pigment in plants that does more like reds and purples and blues, anybody know what that one's called?
The anthocyanins.
The anthocyanins. So if there's more anthocyanin than chlorophyll, then it's going to be one of those colors. Now the anthocyanin, the thing that's different about those than the carotenoid is that the pH of the soil that it's growing in is going to affect the color, like I said about the hydrangeas. So if you have, does anybody have blue hydrangeas that grow in their yard, like the blue? Okay, you have those. Okay. So I have those in my backyard, and the ones that grow on one side of my backyard are blue as can be, and the ones that grow on the other side of my backyard where the soil is more basic are more like purple, almost like purpley pink. Okay, so that's, is yours like that too? Yeah, and it's kind of cool. And if I wanted them all to be blue, then I could put some acid-loving fertilizer in the ground, and I could get them all to be that blue color. I could get the ones on the other side to be even bluer, if I wanted them to. Okay, what type of trees lose their leaves for winter?
Oak.
What is the broad category? Well, oak trees too, but what is the broad category of trees that are gonna lose their leaves for winter? Deciduous. Okay, so you've got evergreens are gonna stay green all year, so that's gonna be like your pine trees, that you're more needle-like. A lot of things with needles are going to be evergreens. Deciduous trees and plants are going to lose their leaves for winter, and that helps them survive through the winter and helps them to conserve water. Because there's not going to be water going through transpiration, leaving the plant throughout the winter. Okay, So how does a plant know when to lose its leaves? What happens in the environment for the tree to know when it's about time to drop the leaves? Does it have to do with temperature? What does it have to do with?
There's the layer, because you call it abscission layer.
The abscission layer.
Sorry.
Mhm.
When the day starts to getting shorter.
So that's what I'm looking for. It's all about the days getting shorter. Some people think it's because the weather's getting colder. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the days getting shorter, okay? And so what happens with that abscission layer? Nancy, do you remember what happens with
They
that?
begin to block this island and the phloem.
Mm-hmm,
And so the layer, the leaves start to crack,
mm-hmm.
and then they fall off under their own weight.
Okay, so remember the xylem and phloem are carrying the water and the minerals up to the leaves where they're needed, and then carrying the sugars that are maybe made in those cells on the leaves back down through the plant, okay? But that abscission layer forms and it blocks the xylem and phloem, and so it actually blocks the formation of any kind of new chloroplast or chlorophyll, okay? Which is why the green, the leaf is gonna start to fade. You're not gonna see the green anymore. And then the leaf itself is going to crack and it's going to fall off, okay? And so when it's blocking the chloroplast, the other colors, the other pigments that are in the leaf then are going to have the opportunity to shine through. So if you've got the carotenoids in the leaf or the anthocyanins, you're going to see them because you're no longer going to see the chloroplast, the chlorophyll working. And so if you have a sunny, cool autumn, you're gonna be more likely to see more vibrant leaves. You're gonna see those reds, yellows, and purples. If it is cloudy and warm, you're not gonna get as good of colors, and that has to do with those other pigments in the leaves. And then what about, why are some leaves, why do they just turn brown?
Because they don't have the other pigment underneath.
Okay. So they don't have the other pigment, and the degrading of the different cell parts, the dying out of the cell parts produces something called tannic acid. Tannic acid is tannins are what's used to make tea, okay? But tannic acid turns the leaves brown. And so that is causing the brown color. Okay, all right, so let's look at 442 on your own. There are a few leaves, such as the floating leaves of a water lily plant in which the stomata and the spongy mesophyll are on the top side of the leaf, while the palisade mesophyll, that's the tightly packed part, is on the bottom. In these leaves, which side will have the darker color? The underside. Because those cells are going to be tightly packed. All right, if a leaf isn't green, does it mean there's no chlorophyll in it? No. If a leaf has no abscission layer, what color will it be in the winter?
Green.
It'll be green all winter, okay, because it's not gonna cut off the chloroplast. Okay, so I know that you stopped here, but because we have more to cover next week, I'm just doing one more, I'm gonna go through one more section, just this section on roots. It's not gonna take very long. Just kind of some basic things about roots to learn. Okay, so one thing that I find fascinating about roots, and you think about these huge trees, is that if you lined the roots up for a tree, the length of the roots would be 5 to 10 times longer than the height of the tree. So you think about these huge trees. and how much root it takes, because that's where it's got to have all the surface area for the water absorption to support that tree, okay? So roots kind of come in two patterns, and if you look on figure 14.9 on page 443, you're gonna see two types of roots. So this one to the left, the tree, and there's a I guess you guys have probably seen that cool tree where you can see all the roots at the park in downtown Greenville, you know what I'm talking about? This reminds me of that. So this is going to be a fibrous root system, kind of like almost forms like a netting where the roots are gonna go out. And then a tap root system, you've got a main root, and it kind of stays the main root. Okay, and so you've got one main root. So the tap root is going to go, which one do you think is going to be deeper and which one is going to be shallower, Nancy?
The fibrous root system would be the deeper one, and the taproot system would be the,
What do you think, Ruby? Anybody else have a different answer and a reason?
It depends on the system. I believe it would be taproot.
The taproot is going to be deeper because the fibrous, you've got increased surface area because you've got all these roots coming off, okay? So you've got multiple roots coming off the main root, okay? So when I say it's 5 to 10 times taller than the tree, it's if you line the whole thing up vertically, it's gonna be 5 to 10 times taller. The taproot is, so you look at that carrot, and the carrot is the taproot. It's still bigger than what's growing on the top, okay? But with this tree, so the fibrous root system is not going to be as deep as a taproot system. So this is why most trees are not going to have a taproot system. They're gonna have a fibrous root system. All right, so with the fibrous root system, you still are gonna have a primary root that everything is going to branch off of there. All right, so look to page 444, and this is going to be a longitudinal slice, and next week we're going to be looking at I think 5 or 6 different slides, and these are going to be slices of roots in different parts of the plant. We're going to be looking for these things. Okay, so this is a root, and at the very bottom of that root you're going to have the root cap, and so this is going to be the part that's like pressing down into the soil. So it's going to need to be tough, okay? And it's going to be, these are going to be dead, thick-walled cells that provide protection and that are tough and can shove down into the soil, okay? Above the root cap, we have the meristematic region. What does that mean? What do we know about the word meristematic? And so what do you think about that region? What do we know about meristematic? What is meristematic tissue?
it's the stuff that doesn't actually have a dedicated, like.
Yes, so it's undifferentiated, okay? So this is where mitosis and growth happens, and these cells haven't become what type of cell they're going to become yet, but you're gonna have rapid growth in that area. Above that meristematic tissue, you have a region that is called the elongation region, and these cells have differentiated. They have become what kind of cells they're going to become, and they have something that allows them to elongate and grow. Who remembers what is in a plant cell that an animal cell doesn't have that could cause it to elongate? Ruby?
No.
That's part of it, but
No.
what is pushing up against that cell wall that could
It's
cause
like
it?
that thing that can like, oh, I know what you're talking about. I see it on the wall.
Yeah, I can literally
I
see
don't
the
remember
chart.
the name.
Okay, central vacuole. So that central vacuole in that root is going to fill with water. It's going to press up against that cell wall, and it's going to cause the cell to elongate, that root cell to elongate. And then at the very top, you have the mature region. Those are fully differentiated cells, and they are mature, and they are going to grow root hairs why would a root need root hairs?
Help absorb,
Uh-huh.
to
Okay,
help absorb water and nutrients.
okay, yes, and what else, you
Like
have
to
anything?
help dig into the ground or no?
So the big thing is it just even gives it more surface area to absorb the water. Okay, so now we're gonna look over on the next page, on page 445, and we have a lateral cross section. So we're like slicing it roundwise, and this is a root. And so on the outside, you've got your dermal tissue, your epidermis, and then on the inside, you have at the very center, that's going to be your vascular chamber, okay, and your xylem is going to be shaped like the X, and the phloem is what is around there. And remember, the xylem is going to distribute the water and minerals up the plant from the root to the leaves, and the phloem carries the food downward from the leaves down to the root and throughout the plant, okay? In dicots, which we'll talk more about this next week, that's where you're gonna get that X shape. And then this whole area around the xylem and phloem is called the vascular cambium. And that type of tissue that the vascular cambium is made up of, those are undifferentiated cells, and they can become xylem or phloem depending on what is needed. So it's really cool how many of these cells have not differentiated yet and can become what they need to become. Okay, all right, so that's it. That's what we're going to cover today. Next week we will finish the chapter and do a microscope lab. It looks like we've got, yes, 5 different slides that we're going to look at. And so what you could do with your lab notebook, if you haven't finished the leaf lab from this week, is just go ahead and allow, because you've got 7 leaves, you could maybe allow like 8 pages for that leaf, and then start 8 or 9 pages for that particular lab, and then do this lab. Go ahead and write this lab up after that
What
lab.
if we can only like find less than 7? Like, is it okay? Like, if we found 5?
No, because the lab itself has 20, and I cut it down to 7. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I do want you to have 7 if it takes you a few weeks. And when you go to someone else's house, or you go somewhere else where there's trees, look around. So you could go to Hatcher Garden in the next few weeks. And so you can leave the space, but I definitely want you to have 7. Okay, so what we're gonna do for the rest of class is you guys are going to work on your module summary, which I think we've gotten through number 10. Well, we've covered everything through 10. And Nancy, I want you to come over here and let me look at your stuff and talk about that.